Welcome back, everyone. Orlando Furioso Canto 6 is taking things to a new degree of crazy, and I cannot wait to go through it briefly with you guys. It's a completely new level of craziness, but I'm also quite excited today because I just made a little bit of an online discovery that I want to share with you as I look for illustrations of Orlando Furioso. And I have to say, the world of Orlando Furioso illustrations is huge, maybe even larger than the Divine Comedy illustrations. And I compare it with the Divine Comedy because the great Gustave Doré, he illustrated the whole Orlando Furioso in a masterful way, and I've already used some of his illustrations and engravings in my previous videos. But I just discovered a couple of twin brothers who are artists. They are Italian artists who then grew up and lived and worked in France, in Paris. They're called the BRIZZI brothers. And they also fell in love with Orlando Furioso, and they illustrated the whole poem in a really beautiful way. Their fascination with Orlando Furioso started apparently as they were working on an animated version of Don Quixote. In a pretty famous scene in Don Quixote, there is a priest who is making an effort to stop Don Quixote's craziness and eccentricities, and so he burns all of his library's books that have chivalrous themes. He burns them all. However, he makes an exception, or some exceptions, for those very few that even he considers too great and too iconic to be destroyed. And among these, there is Orlando Furioso. So the BRIZZI brothers decided to illustrate the Orlando Furioso as well in their own style, in beautiful, gorgeous illustrations that I'm gonna share here, a few of them, and in particular one that is so perfect for Canto 6 because it's illustrating maybe the craziest scene of the entire canto. But we have here a canto that introduces us to another new set of characters, at least new for somebody who's never read the Orlando Innamorato. And so new characters, new names to keep track of if we want. If we don't want, no problem, because this is Orlando Furioso. It's just a matter of enjoying and entertaining ourselves. However, it's not fair, it wouldn't be fair to look at Orlando Furioso as pure entertainment, because it's much more than that. And with Canto 6, we start seeing a lot more this kind of new dimension. This is the first canto where we can see so many echoes of previous great epics like the Iliad, Odyssey, like Circe. We'll see where the canto leads us. And also a certain dimension of values and ethics that probably before Canto 6 has not been present as strongly as it is now. So where are we with this labyrinthine plot? It's, as usual, not really easy to summarize it. It's fun to read it, but then when you close the book and you try to think, what have I just read? It's actually a lot of different turns and twists that are not easy to even remember. So this canto, Canto 6, starts with a little bit of moralizing about Polinesso and about the fact that whoever commits some injustices will, in one way or the other, be found out. Miser chi il maloprando si confida, c'ignor star debbia il malficio occulto, che quando ogni altro taccia intorno grida, l'aria e la terra istessa in che sepulto. We return to this mysterious knight who has appeared to save Ginevra, and his identity is revealed to be Ariodante, one of these two Italian brothers who had been there, and he was in love with Ginevra, Ginevra was in love with him. So this is kind of the happy ending that everybody was waiting for. The question is, so what happened? Has the messenger been lying about seeing Ariodante jumping in the sea and committing suicide? It turns out that he wasn't lying. In fact, Ariodante jumped in, but he regretted his act just when he was in the sea, and he was so strong in swimming out of the sea that he got out. He found the hostel of a hermit, and from there he heard about the situation in which Ginevra was, and he decided to go and help. That's maybe the tail end of the story of Canto 5. Everybody's happy. The maid, Dalinda, she gets pardoned, also thanks to Rinaldo's intercession. And she is sent off to Denmark. Apparently she will become a nun. And this is the end of this little subplot. Now Ariosto takes us back to Ruggiero. The last time we saw him, he was on board the flying hippogriff, and we didn't know where the hippogriff was taking him. Now we see him flying and shaking like a leaf despite being a very brave knight, and landing on this mysterious island, which looks gorgeous and magnificent, full of various vegetation. He lands, he inspects the island, and he finds a myrtle tree that he ends up hitching the hippogriff to. So this tree is a myrtle tree, and as soon as the hippogriff breaks it, from inside, from within the tree, a voice comes out in an extremely Dantean way, because this is in fact a scene that Dante himself had taken from Virgil, and it's present in the Inferno, in fact in the circle of the suicides in Dante's Inferno, where a branch is broken and the voice of the suicidal soul blurts out in a very poetic way. So this is really an echo, an imitation of the Divine Comedy once again. And this voice introduces himself to Ruggiero as a new character that we haven't heard so far in the poem. His name is Astolfo. Astolfo is another knight. He is related to Orlando and Rinaldo. He's also next in line as King of England, so it's a very high-level knight. And during some adventure, he got trapped in a cave. We're talking about adventures back in Orlando Innamorato. And then he was freed by Orlando. Once freed, he was then going back to Europe when some kind of sorceress named Alcina kidnapped him by sending him out to swim to some kind of island-looking thing that was not an island, but turned out to be the back of a whale. Now, we find out that Alcina is Morgana's sister. They are two sorceresses, and they are both evil. They have a sister who is good and who represents all that is virtues and good, and her name is Logistilla. They're basically the mean girls, and they hate Logistilla. But this is also another long digression, and finally Astolfo gets back to how he got changed into a tree. The story is very, very similar to Odysseus and Circe, or I looked it up. In fact, the pronunciation of Circe is apparently in American English Circe, in British English Circe, and if we go back to the Greek pronunciation, she's actually called Kirke. So let's maybe call her Circe because we are in America, but otherwise. So just like Circe, Alcina likes changing men into beasts or plants when she gets bored with them. That's the story. And this is how Astolfo becomes a myrtle tree. All this and the fact that Astolfo is also Bradamante's cousin make him sad that he cannot help Astolfo. But there's nothing that Ruggiero can do, and at this point he asks for directions towards Logistilla. He gets them and he sets out in order to find Logistilla on this island. Ruggiero sees from a distance a fabulous city with golden walls all around it, and he probably figures out that that's where Alcina is living, and so he probably should avoid, because this is considered to be Alcina's island, and that's not where he wants to go. However, along the way he takes a mountain road where he is attacked by this horde of twisted monsters. They have goat heads, some of them bodies upside down, and it's something like a Hieronymus Bosch type of painting, out of hell. Ariosto is not playing randomly here with these monsters. Each one of them is representing an actual vice that Ruggiero has to fight allegorically in order to then walk and achieve the virtuous place or the virtuous person, who is Logistilla, who is incarnated by Logistilla. So we can easily see the monsters with monkey heads as the adulators, the centaurs as the violent, the fauns as the lusty. Every one of these monsters corresponds more or less to vice. In fact, interestingly, in stanza number 62, Ariosto says there are some of these monsters who go particularly fast. Some of these monsters, chi lento va con l'asino, col bue, they're going particularly slow. So this is all disorder behaviors and vices, the laziness, the excessive hurriedness. They're all represented in these little sketches. The captain of this monstrous gang of people is a guy with a big belly who is on top of a turtle, of a big turtle, and he's representing leisure, or in Latin otium, who was always represented and talked about in ancient literature as well as the father of all vices. So leisure, laziness is really the father of all these vices. Ruggiero engages in a fierce battle with all these monsters. He's very strong, they don't have weapons, so he's able to defend himself up to a certain point. But then we can say that he is almost rescued by two damsels who come out of the Golden Town, and they are riding on two unicorns. And they tell him, they open up yet another subplot, because they tell him that there is a monster in a swamp who is birthing all these minor monsters, and so they ask him if he can help them by defeating this monster. And of course, Ruggiero, being the knight that he is, very gladly accepts. And here we are, yet another cliffhanger to end this Canto 6, yet another kind of ordered confusion. But we can see how more complex these cantos are becoming, more epic, more even reflective in a sense about human nature. So thank you very much for listening to this little video, and see you for Canto 7.